We can go ahead and get started. Louis, are we recording?
Yep, just started it.
Cool. Well, hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all virtually. My name is Dan Miller. I am the product manager as well as the UX instructor for PT11. So today we're going to go through just a high-level discussion around ethical approaches towards product management and more or less how we're going to approach developing products throughout Labs PT11. But also just to foundationally give you all considerations that you can take with you, during your time in labs and also afterwards to go out and build more ethical products in the world. So first, just to get us started, in the thread that I started in Slack, folks, can you just start by just chiming in and let me know what your favorite tech product is and why in one sentence? Okay, Robert, JS, what's that? Got it. Cool job. Awesome. Cash App. Google Drive because it lets you share docs. That's great. My smartphone has books, music, and messages. Awesome. Grammarly. Nice. I like that. Grammarly's a great product. Google Maps because I'm terrible at directions. It's great, Louis. Cool. That's a great primary. Those are awesome. So just want to share a little bit about my favorite product, which is Airbnb. And specifically, I love Airbnb just because it provides a few different options for when I travel with my friends or by myself, actually. And so first and foremost, I specifically, I love the Airbnb because it provides access to homes that feel a bit more warm and feel a bit more closer to a natural living space that I would already be in versus a hotel. And so one thing that I think Airbnb did really well early on was really nailing down this value prop and designing for a kind of home experience away from home. And they've been really thoughtful in how they've tried to curate this experience virtually, but also offline in each of their host homes. And this is extrapolated out into a few different other kind of channels that they've created as well. So they have Homes Plus, I believe. They have Homes Lux now, which is even higher end. And then they have like corporate offerings as well. But generally, it's the same premise of just whenever you travel, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be in a kind of sterile environment that doesn't necessarily feel that warm, or it feels rather commercial. So that's one thing that I really love about Airbnb. But there's one thing that, aside from all those things that I mentioned, that Airbnb did right in terms of really nailing the value prop and really understanding their customer and understanding their customers' needs, that they didn't do right. And that was necessarily grow their business in the most ethical fashion. And so aside from Airbnb having this really heartwarming story and their team being very user-centric and very design-focused on creating a really amazing, thoughtful experience, one thing that they didn't really nail was how they were scaling their business. And specifically, they didn't necessarily agree to try to play nice or really just consider local municipalities or any kind of localized government excuse me, as they were launching in new cities and growing their businesses. And so what ended up happening was very early on for multiple years, at least 4 or 5 years, Airbnb would be in these lawsuits around the world, uh, dealing with headlines like this and dealing with local, state, and city governments, and sometimes national governments as well, pushing back against Airbnb being operational in their cities because not only were they not complying with regulatory laws as it pertained to leasing and subleasing spaces, but also largely the taxation that they were not um, adhering to just by not having these conversations with these local municipalities. And hindsight is 2020, and also hindsight just allows us to really critically assess these decisions. But one thing that is objectively true is that uh, Airbnb was going to have to address these things when they were going to scale, regardless. And so they just chose not to, and they made a decision to not be as quote unquote ethical on the front end and deal with the pushback that ended up happening afterwards. And that uh, a decision that they believed that it was worth the expense, and that they thought that, okay, we'll go ahead and grow our business very quickly. We'll get some pushback. We'll apologize, and then we'll move forward. But that wasn't necessarily the case. These were people were very angry, and these were, like I said, lawsuits that they have had and continue to deal with over years. So, how can we think about building ethical experiences and products? And the first is to, which I'm sure a lot of you on this call that are designers or otherwise have probably heard this, is just starting with the user. But one thing that I'll actually push this a bit further is starting with the environment and the context that you're engaging the user, whether that be from a research perspective or whether that be from introducing them to your product as an actual user or potential customer. And so when we start to think about the context that our customers and users are interacting with our products, we can start to understand all of these edge cases that may that come into play, that may dissuade their sentiment on the product and view us as being unethical or ethical. And so, pushing this forward, I wanted to dive a little bit into ethical research. And so, when I say ethical research, I'm focusing on um, making sure that we are going through a research process that allows us to focus on doing good, as well as doing no harm. And ways that we can do this within a research process are to, again, make sure that we have the user's intention and their environment in mind. And so trying to be as empathetic as possible as we're going through research processes, and trying to ask them questions and learn about them, so that we can actually collect information from them, and also have them leave the research experience by not feeling that they've been taken advantage of, or not feel that we weren't necessarily considering their experience as we were going through the research process. And I'll give you a tangible example of an area where this went wrong. And so there is a design studio here in San Francisco by the name of IDEO. And so IDEO was doing some product research on a product for a clinical trial. And so they created this process for, they're doing some research in creating solutions around getting individuals recruited for clinical trials for, I believe this may have been cancer or some terminal disease. And so they went as far as building out wireframes and medium fidelity to perhaps high fidelity mocks of a particular solution. And they were inviting these folks that were looking for clinical trial opportunities and recruitment sites to use the product. And so after they went through the research process, some of these patients were coming back to IDEO asking them if they were selected for the clinical trial. and as you might expect, this is a very extreme example, but as you might expect, this a very traumatic experience for anyone to have when they're just participating in some research. And so one of the things that obviously IDEO could have done was just make sure that it was clear that what these individuals were participating in was not real and that it was for research purposes for them to produce a product down the line in the future. But that's one use case of when you're going into a research process without the intent of doing good and specifically doing no harm. These traumatic experiences can come up, or these edge cases can come up, and it's in everyone's benefit to have these in our awareness and try to plan for them up front. So, one question to pose, just to give you all some considerations when you're actually beginning to conduct ethical research, is to think through: am I helping those that use this product? And so I spoke a little bit to how this can go wrong, in the case of IDEO. But this is a question that you can ask yourself and ask your team when you're beginning to do ethical research. Next, another question, or rather consideration to take into account before you are starting research, to make sure that you are aligning yourself by doing no harm and doing some good, is to think through: how does my research affect the community that I'm researching? And again, I'll point back to the IDEO case. Again, this was just like a rare edge case, but these types of dynamics do come in play in any kind of research project. And so tomorrow we'll focus on a product vision document, which includes some user research and some technical research. And so when you find yourselves in your teams in the scenario where you're going out and you're conducting user research, it's important just to talk through these things and try to get a sense of the environment that your users may be in, so that you can actually, again, have some awareness and hedge against some adverse effects that may present themselves during the research. Next, another consideration to think through is minimizing harm, which I spoke to a little bit earlier, but just reiterating it here again, just because it's hard to try to do no harm. I think at best we're just trying to minimize harm and understand that we're all humans, and that some of these edge cases maybe exist within our blind spots. And so just trying to do our best is the best approach. And so, but again, just having awareness and starting with having conversations around how do we ethically conduct user research is like a really good first step, and something that I feel highly confident a lot of companies in Silicon Valley still aren't doing today. And that's been my experience for sure, which is why we're sharing this today. So when all of you go out into the jobs that you'll have in the future, you can start to approach research and collecting data in ethical ways. Cool. So next, I want to give you some areas, some categories to look into when you're coming up with considerations for understanding the environment of the users that you may be conducting research with. And so the five are the physical environment, psychological environment, rather their mindset, social environments, financial, and privacy. And so these are five categories, again, that offer some considerations for you and your teams to talk through as you're going out into different communities to conduct user research. So specifically, I'll give you some examples, thinking through their physical environment. So this includes things like thinking through where you might be asking individuals to conduct user research with you. So if it is like a Zoom call, understanding where they might be, or trying to think through where they might be, trying to think through if you're asking them about a specific problem or solution that they may be experiencing when they're in a physical space, trying to take into account all the considerations that they may be exposed to when they're in those spaces. That's less relevant now in quarantine life, but outside of this time period, that's something that's particularly important. Next, expanding into psychological environments, or rather their mindset. And again, so this is really important to think through in relation to the problem that you're trying to address. And so, like, the insights that you're trying to collect from the user to solve a specific problem. And what's important here is to, again, just take some time to try to gain awareness around the psychological state and the mindset that individuals may be in as it pertains to a particular problem that you're conducting research around. And the more thoughtful that we can all be there, the more thoughtful the insights will be that we collect from individuals, but also the experience will be that much better, and folks won't be leaving the experience feeling, again, like they were taken advantage of. Next, social environments. And so this is kind of tangential to physical environments, but trying to think through what physical aspects, what communal aspects may come into play with these individuals when you are conducting user research. And so specifically, this is important as it pertains to the specific problem that you are trying to, again, do user research around. And so what's really important here is to try to get some insight into, again, the communal aspects that individuals may be experiencing in their environment, and how that may impact their experience, or how that may impact the answers that they give you when you are conducting user research with them. And the last two are their financial considerations as well as privacy. Financial is speaking to specifically how income and other financial means come into play as they are providing insights around a specific problem. Not that likely to come up with the products that we've selected, but again, outside of this experience, these are considerations that are helpful for you. And lastly, privacy, making sure that we are very clear about communicating that we're asking for, like communicating that how we're going to be using the data that we're collecting from each user interview session. And to that extent, want to focus on informed consent. And so, again, it's a little tangential to understanding privacy, but making sure that there is informed consent from the research subjects that we do use in user interviews is important. So that can be a written consent or verbal, especially if we are recording the sessions to share with other members of the team, making sure that this is very transparent and very clear for the subjects that we are conducting user research with. Next, some additional ways that we can make sure that we're doing ethical research is to make sure that the subjects understand that they will be anonymous. Obviously, if we're recording the session, these folks will, their likeness will be recorded, and most likely their names, but making sure that we're not, outside of that, we're not sharing the videos with folks outside of our team, and making sure that these subjects understand that the information they do share with us will be confidential and used specifically for the development of a potential solution for the problem they're experiencing. And lastly, want to focus on deception for a little bit. And here it's just, it goes without saying that we shouldn't be focusing on trying to deceive any of the folks that we were conducting research with in any kind of way, or manipulating them in any kind of way, and making sure that there is a very clear objective process around asking questions, well, setting expectations around what is going to happen within the research session, what they can expect that we will use the data for, as well as how long we are going to be interviewing them or asking for their time. And anything deviating from what has been agreed upon and the expectations that we set does fall into this category of deception. And so we do want to stay away from using insights in any kind of malicious way, or collecting data and using it in any other kind of way than we communicated with the subject with. Cool. So now we will go through a small exercise. And so now it's your turn. So I want you all to pick a product, and I'll show the products in a second. But we will create breakout rooms. And so in each of the breakout rooms, I love for you and your teams to go through and answer these following questions. So the first is to identify the initial problem the team wanted to solve. Think through what you think was the MVP. And so specifically the minimum viable product or the very first iteration of the product that they launched. Who was the initial audience? What are the competitors to the product? Identify the point in time where the product team had to make an unethical or ethical decision, and try to think through what that decision was, what factors may have led to that decision, and do you think that was the right decision? Why? And did this decision affect its user base? And if so, how? So I'll post these are all the products. I'll post the products in the thread that we started in Slack. And Lloyd, could you create breakout rooms for the next 15 minutes?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm gonna do it right now.
Cool.
People are howling in my neighborhood.
Or what that's about.
What's going on?
If the TLs can join too, that'd be great.
Did you send the invites out?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We still have quite a few people in here. It might be AFK. Hey Wade, Ryan, did you guys get any breakout room invites?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll need another invite. I clicked later. I didn't know we were supposed to join them.
Oh, no worries.
Cool.
Try hitting that little breakout room button. If it doesn't work, let me know. There should be like a breakout. Yeah,
Yep,
you got it.
So we have about 10 minutes left. Does anyone want to go? I know there are about 24 teams, but does anyone want to share some of the answers from their session with the rest of the group?
Our group dived in on Yelp for a little bit. We sort of had a mixed bag for our conclusions. We were all on the side of that they are sketchy or janky at best because they have all these allegations against them of not necessarily being fair with their review practices, and they don't seem to be doing much affirmatively to fix that. They came up with um, a new feature recently that makes you tie a real face and a real name to your reviews, but there doesn't seem to be much else besides that other than just being in court a whole bunch. So we didn't necessarily feel like that was the best ethical response, and none of us feel super great about Yelp as a service because of that. And I don't know if that's exactly a bullseye for what you guys were looking for on the thing, but that's what we came up with.
Awesome. Yeah, that's close enough. Yelp is a great example, for product designers and product managers that go through the UX and critique Yelp, and for just from a business analyst perspective, they do all types of a large percentage of the kind of dark UX trends that we're not supposed to implement in products. Yelp has these in their products still today, and so that was a really good example actually.
So I can go next.
Go for it.
So we discussed Robinhood. I think Robinhood is a very disruptive product, like Airbnb and Uber and Lyft, who have disrupted a whole industry. So I'm sure a lot of people must be familiar with it. This is a discount brokerage, which if you want to buy and sell stocks, you have to open an account at a discount broker, which used to charge a lot of commissions. It used to be $10 per trade, then it cut down to $5. I mean, the biggest ones were E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, and Schwab. Now, Robinhood came up with a great idea. So the main, how these people make money is by commissions. Robinhood came up with the idea that let's make zero commissions, which is like amazing. Like we were discussing that it is sort of like hotels are saying, oh, you can stay here for free. So their initial target was that there are a lot of young people, millennials who are starting out who want to buy and sell stocks because the stock market has been doing good for past 10 years. It's going up. And but they don't have a lot of money. They probably have like $1,000 saved. They want to buy and sell stocks, but they don't want to pay $5. A buy and sell will be $10, and you do it a lot of times. I mean, it can add up to hundreds of dollars per month. It's a big customer pain. They realized it. They cut it down to zero, and they grew so much. They were growing so fast that actually this year their competitors like TD Ameritrade, Fidelity, Schwab, and E-Trade, everybody cut down the commissions to zero, which was like, I mean, I'm in the finance industry. It was a big surprise. It was like kind of shocking. Um, and it literally disrupted the industry. Like TD Ameritrade was acquired by Schwab. There is like a survival thing going on. What are we going to do to survive against this Robinhood? So they have a bare bone product. It's not like fancy bells and whistles trading platforms offered by E-Trade or other stuff, but it's a mobile app. Uh, and very simple. But if you want, somebody wants to buy options or get margin on their account, they have an option of paying little bit extra money per month and doing that too. um,
Do you think at any point in their early career that they reached a point in the product development where they had to make an ethical or unethical decision?
yeah, this is one question we could not really answer because I mean, this is something probably who only belong to the development team would have would be able to answer. But in the finance industry, there are a lot of ethical. It's a very tightly regulated industry, and they have to, there are a lot of regulations they have to follow. They have to, maintain custody of the customer's money, get registered with all the regulatory authorities. So without that, they cannot operate.
Yeah,
So this
actually,
is one question we really could not uh, reach. And I mean, given more time, I would probably research and find an answer. But uh, this is something that we need to find out.
great. I think you're kind of orbiting around the right answer. Like there was an ethical decision that they made at the very beginning as a value prop and only charging for commissions, right? And so like you could argue that that was kind of a growth mechanism, but
Yeah.
that could most certainly be viewed as an ethical decision that they wanted to take as a financial services company, which ended up changing some of how the incumbents were doing business as well.
Yeah.
But in the interest of time, we have 4 minutes left, and so Bhavneesh, thank you so much for your input there. But if anyone has any other general questions, I'd love to answer them in the thread. But with that, we'll end the session on products and ethics. And I know that Jake is going to be leading the lecture on teamwork and collaboration in a little bit. But thank you all.